Hey, I'm Morgan Ortagus. Welcome back to the Morgan Ortagus Show. This time I am at our southern border in Yuma, Arizona. This is our most important national security issue. I'm thrilled to be here with you with Chad Wolf, former acting secretary of DHS, that's Department of Homeland Security. In the Trump administration, we're standing right by this big wall that he helped build with President Trump through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, so we'll talk to him about that. Thanks again for watching another episode of the Morgan Ortagus Show. Stay with us. I'm really lucky this week that I'm at the place where it is literally the most important national security issue, and that is our southern border. And I'm here with the person who actually helped fix this broken southern border until the Biden administration came the past 3.5 years. But I'm here with somebody that our audience knows very well. Chad Wolf was the DHS secretary, Department of Homeland Security secretary under President Trump. And as our audience knows quite well, when you were DHS secretary, we did not see the chaos, the open and undefended border that we see today. Yeah. What's it like for you, Chad Wolf, to come back and to see something that I know I feel this when we talk about the Middle East and right. Abraham Accords. What's it like for you to come back to the border and see something that you spent blood, sweat, tears, hours fixing to see it all undone?
Well, it's frustrating. It's not frustrating because I spent a lot of time on it, which of course we did, but it's frustrating because you have Border Patrol agents that have been down here in this crisis for over 3 years that they know how to secure this border. If this administration would just listen to them and take their advice, heed their advice, they could get this border under control, but for other reasons, political reasons, whatever it might be, they're choosing not to. So the frustration that I feel is not necessarily because I put a lot of hard work into it, but because the Border Patrol put a lot of hard work into it, and they're the ones left. Political leadership comes and goes, but they're the ones here on the border that have to live with it and deal with the terrible policies of the Biden administration.
You know, we are standing literally right next to the border, right next to the Trump wall.
That's right.
That big, beautiful wall. Tell us some, I mean, you got to tell us the stories. And you got a bug on you, I'm going to get it. What was it like to work with President Trump to build this big, beautiful wall?
Well, he was intimately involved in the construction of this wall.
That doesn't surprise me.
This is a 30-foot wall that we're standing behind. If you came here or you go to other parts of the border before the Trump administration, the wall was about 8 feet. 8 feet is it's not imposing. You can scale, you can defeat 8 feet pretty quickly. And that's what they were seeing. A lot of incursions from the infrastructure that was here previously. And so Border Patrol and President Trump said, yep, we're not doing that. If we're going to construct something here using taxpayer dollars, we're going to make it be effective.
Right.
And so that's what you see here. You see steel bollards. These go down about anywhere between 5 and 7 feet in the ground. And then, of course, it goes up 30 feet. And there's no wall that's not defeatable, right? People can still scale this, particularly talented and trained individuals, which the cartels have.
Right.
They can still scale this. That's not the type of individuals this is built for. This is built for groups of individuals trying to come across that border. But if we go down here to the right here, for probably a couple hundred feet, you'll see where the wall ends. And you'll see the ability to come right across. And again,
and how did that happen? How did that end? It just ran out of time in the Trump administration?
Yeah, so we built.
And President Biden just stopped.
We built about 453 miles of border wall, not only here in the Yuma sector, but across the border. And President Biden halted all construction on day one. And really hasn't done much, if any, since then. And you'll see, and we'll see down here, probably tomorrow, you'll see unused steel bollards like these that have been sitting in this desert for over 3 years.
Well, it doesn't surprise me what you said, that President Trump was deeply involved in the building of this wall and what it would look like. That tracks. I'd be surprised if he didn't. But, I want to go back to something that you just brought up, and then I have so many questions to ask you. Of course, we're here at the southern border in Yuma, Arizona. But you had mentioned that one of the things that's so frustrating and heartbreaking for you is how much what President Biden and his team have done over the past 3 years, how much it affects the local communities.
Yeah.
Just give us a sense of thought for the impact, especially on law enforcement.
Yeah.
They already have tough day-to-day jobs. Now their jobs are made so much more tough.
Yeah, I think this is an issue I'm not sure a lot of Americans think about, right? You think about the border crisis and you see hundreds and then thousands and millions of folks coming across that border illegally. And I think that's what most Americans react to.
Right.
A basic sense of fairness of they're coming across the wrong way, it's illegal, it's against our laws, but yet they're doing it. And there could be national security threats, and there are in there. And I think that's where most Americans, for the communities along this border and elsewhere in the country, it goes beyond that, right? Because it's what's the strain on those communities, right?
Yeah.
Where do all these people go? They just don't magically like disappear. They go into these border communities and other communities across the country. So what does that do to your public safety system in a place like Yuma or Nogales, other parts here in Arizona? Which is, if you're being, as a public safety official and a law enforcement, you're responding to more and more calls, more and more incidents, high-speed chases, other things. Yet the number of deputies you have remains the same, right? Your budget's not increasing. It's not like these folks are paying taxes, right?
Right.
And so the pool of resources that you have to deal with this remains the same, and yet your mission now has been expanded 4, 5, 6 times over. And so and so that's the issue, public safety, but the same thing can be said about public school systems, right? All these children that are coming in, they eventually make their way into school systems, and English is not their first language. So what does that do to other classrooms and other communities, public health systems, the strain on hospitals, and the list kind of goes on and on.
You know, your answer there brings up a question that actually one of my listeners asked last Sunday, and I promised that I would ask it of you when we're here at the border. But one of the things people have been curious about, and the press has written about, is what do deportations potentially look like in a second Trump administration if he were to win again in November? Because we not only have the problem of having to go back, secure the border again, deal with all of it, but now we have the problem of millions and millions of people in our country.
Yeah, so, look, the ability to remove someone from the country is an integral part of immigration law. So whether you call it a deportation or repatriation or a removal, it's all the same. You're removing someone out of the country that doesn't have a legal right to be here. So that's what former President Trump is talking about. It's not only the folks that have come in, but it's also the folks that come in every single day. It's not just 2 years ago or last year, it's every single day. And how do you stop this catch and release into American communities? And how do you remove people back to their home countries? Every country in the world uses the ability to remove people out of their country as a way to provide enforcement and deterrence as part of the immigration system. We've done it historically here in the United States. It's only until President Trump starts talking about it that people lose their mind and say, oh, you can't do that. That's that's so harsh.
At the time, didn't President Obama in his second term have more deportations?
Yeah, they called him the deporter in chief, right? Because he removed individuals. And look, the left went crazy during Obama. And of course, they'll go crazy anytime you start removing folks. But this is how it works. When I was acting secretary, I used to get phone call after phone call after phone call from members of Congress, right? Because they had someone in their community that was here illegally. ICE had become aware of them somehow, picked them up, and was in the process of deporting them or removing them. And members of Congress would call me almost daily and say, please stop ICE from doing that.
Why?
Because they've been here 10 years and they're a member of our community and you can't do this. And, can you look into it? Can you look into it? And my answer almost routinely was no, I'm going to let ICE do their job.
Good for you.
We don't provide any type of special status just because you get to call me. Not everyone gets to do that. But if they're here illegally, they're going to be removed. If they're not, then they'll go through the court system and they'll be able to stay.
Wow, that's insane.
Happens all the time.
So when you look at the size and the scale of the problem, we do have a lot of people that are here with you and me who may end up being legislators next year. We'll see. What is your advice to people around the country, whether it's federal office or local office, but that are looking to educate themselves? And there's so much controversy around, even amongst Republicans, whether they should go for the immigration law or not. And it seems to be so convoluted at some point that, if you're a first-time legislator looking at this problem, what are you hoping that they take away from this trip saying, this is what I think we should fix in 25?
Yeah, it's really important that they're here. You don't really understand the border until you're here and you're talking to the officials. You're walking on the dirt. You kind of see the scale of the challenge that's ahead of you. I think for those folks, immigration law and border security, it's really, really tough to understand if you haven't lived it day in and day out. So if you're not sure, I would encourage them to talk to someone who kind of knows this world, and they'll tell you what works and they'll tell you what doesn't work. Do not, under any circumstance, listen to the traditional media, right? The NBCs and the ABCs and the CBSs, they'll tell you all these great phrases, right? Secretary Mayorkas uses these phrases all the time, which is, he'll say this one a lot: everyone we're picking up is an expedited removal. Well, that sounds good. That sounds like we're removing everyone out of the country. That's actually not what that means, right? Because you can put them in expedited removal, and then all someone says is, I'm seeking asylum. They get moved out of that into a different system, and he knows that, right? So it's not what they tell you, it's what they don't tell you, and it's how they describe things. So the more you get educated about it, the more that you understand. But this comes back to just holding people accountable. If they choose to break our law, if they choose to come over illegally, and they don't have a legal right to be here and to remain here, then we need to remove them. And then you've got to fix the system where you don't release them into American communities and have them go for 7 years before they potentially show up for a court date.
What this all boils down to is rule of law, which I thought we were all supposed to care about, and enforcing our current laws, immigration, who's in, who's out. What I'm curious, because you've worked with many of these Democratic legislators, why do they want millions of people coming into this country illegally? It doesn't make sense from polling, from a political perspective. It doesn't make sense to me from a national security perspective. You add so many threats to the country. So why would you want to do this?
Here's what I found, that a lot of the folks on the left, they don't want to actually look at what the law says. They want the law to be what they hope it is, or what they envision it could be. And so if you look at it through the prism of that, and the Biden administration will tell you, and Mayorkas will tell you, we're re-imaging our immigration system to align with our values. Okay, that sounds great. Well, what are your values? But one of their values is anyone and everyone should be able to come to the United States, regardless of the reason, regardless of where they come from. And that's not what our law says. And once they're here, none of them should be removed. Again, not what our law says. So you have to look at what I think what they hope it should be, or what they want it to be, I should say, versus the reality and what Congress has passed to say, here's what you can and can't do. And members, law enforcement of DHS are going to follow the rule of law. They're going to follow their leadership, and they're going to do that. And during the Trump administration, we just found if we put some guardrails on them, but we just allowed them to do their job, they're very efficient at this, and they can do it very well. But when you handcuff them, literally, that the Biden administration is doing, they get frustrated, and then you see the numbers and you see the crisis, and you get underwater so quickly, which the Biden administration has done. You can't dig out from under it.
Well, we are incredibly lucky. This is our second trip together to the border. We're bringing a lot of people that want to get informed and want to get educated. And I think it's fantastic to be at the wall that Chad Wolf spent so many years with President Trump trying to build. And this is what we do on the Morgan Ortagus Show. We bring you the top interviews from around the country and around the world, this time at the place that is our #1 national security issue, our southern border.